Respect is a curious thing. It's elusive, not something you can grasp by merely wanting it or demanding it. Respect doesn't yield to orders or fall in line with pleas. No, it grows only when rooted in a foundation of integrity, self-discipline, and genuine self-respect. And if you're caught in patterns that chip away at these values, it's time to face a hard truth. These habits need to go, for only then can you truly earn the respect you desire. Let's face reality here. Most people won't respect you, no matter how many hoops you jump through for them, how much of yourself you give. You can work tirelessly, overextend yourself to the point of breaking, and yet that elusive respect remains distant. Why? Because respect isn't about what you do, it's about who you are at your core and the daily habits that define your character. I learned this lesson the hard way. I used to think that being agreeable, kind, and endlessly available would naturally make others respect me. In reality, though, I was unknowingly shrinking myself in their eyes, eroding my worth through these very actions. Respect, I came to realize, doesn't blossom in a world of endless accommodations. It emerges when you cut away the toxic habits that sabotage your value. I used to be baffled, trapped in a cycle where I was overlooked, undervalued, and always left on the sidelines, until I faced myself and stripped away the need for validation, the excuses I clung to, and the self-sabotaging behaviors that kept me small. And as I gradually respected myself more, my entire world shifted in response. You see, respect doesn't begin with others. It begins within. If you don't demand more from yourself, how can you expect it from anyone else? One of the first habits I had to confront was the tendency to make excuses. Let's be brutally honest here. Making excuses is the surest way to guarantee that respect will never come your way. We've all done it. You might tell yourself that your excuse is legitimate, that it's not your fault things went wrong. It was traffic, a missed email, or just one of those days. But here's the truth. Nobody cares about your excuses. People value results, not reasons. In my own life, there was a period when I always had an excuse ready. Late again? It was traffic. Didn't deliver on time. Someone didn't give me the info I needed. At the time, I thought that as long as I could explain myself, everything would be fine. But after a while, I noticed a pattern. My friends stopped trusting me to show up. My boss hesitated to assign me important work, and my family didn't rely on me as they once did. My excuses, no matter how logical they seemed, had eroded their respect for me. Excuses are like a confession. They signal that you're not truly in control of your life, and that lack of control can drain respect faster than any single misstep. Whether it's being late due to traffic or because you overslept, the outcome remains the same. You didn't show up when you said you would. For me, the turning point came when someone, after hearing my well-rehearsed traffic excuse, simply asked, "Why didn't you leave earlier?" That comment, so pointed and straightforward, hit me hard because it was the truth. My life, my time, my commitments, all of it was under my control, yet I was deflecting the blame onto anything but myself. What we often miss is that excuses are a mindset, one that keeps us locked in a cycle of deflection and avoidance. Each time you make an excuse, you're building a wall between yourself and accountability, and nothing weakens respect like a person who won't own their actions. When I finally let go of excuses, I saw a shift in how people interacted with me. Trust slowly crept back, and people noticed the change. I stopped telling tales about traffic or glitches and simply said, "I messed up. I'll do better next time." People can respect that because accountability is powerful. When you stop hiding behind justifications, you show that you're in charge of your life, and that's a quality people inherently respect. The same goes for laziness. Laziness is perhaps one of the most blatant signs of wasted potential, and people are quick to pick up on it. You might have endless talent and the sharpest mind in the room, but if you're lazy, it's all for nothing. Respect isn't about what you could do, it's about what you're actually doing. I once thought I could glide by on my abilities alone. I had a knack for getting decent results with minimal effort, and I believed that was enough. But what I didn't realize was that nobody admired me for my so-called efficiency. In reality, people saw me as someone who was simply coasting, someone who didn't push themselves, and as a result, I was quietly losing their respect. The truth about laziness is that it's highly visible. You might think no one notices when you're slacking, but people do, and it affects how they see you. I vividly remember a group project where I contributed the bare minimum. Others poured in their time, their focus, and their effort, while I contributed just enough to scrape by. When we presented, the disparity in effort was obvious, and the looks I received afterward told me everything. I had failed not only to respect my teammates, but to respect myself, and they noticed. Laziness undermines you in ways that are hard to recover from. People begin to expect little from you, and that's the beginning of the end for respect. Once they lower their expectations, it's incredibly difficult to earn their trust back. Laziness is a form of self-sabotage. It's a choice to remain in your comfort zone rather than seek growth. I had to let go of my shortcut mentality. I thought it was smart to conserve my energy, but in reality, I was stunting my own potential. True respect doesn't come from intellect or talent alone. It's earned through persistence, dedication, and an unwavering commitment to growth. People respect those who push through discomfort, who show up, who put in the hard work even when it's not easy. When you choose laziness, you're telling the world that you're satisfied with mediocrity, and that's hardly a quality anyone respects. Another hard truth I had to face was about personal appearance. We often tell ourselves that appearance shouldn't matter, that people should see past the surface, but let's not kid ourselves. The way you present yourself communicates volumes before you even open your mouth. Neglecting your appearance sends a clear message. You don't respect yourself. And if you can't respect yourself, why should anyone else? I used to think I was being authentic by showing up in whatever I could find, unpolished and unbothered. I convinced myself that people should care about what I said, not how I looked. But it was a lie I told myself to justify my own lack of effort. One day, I walked into an important event looking haphazard, my clothes wrinkled and my hair unkempt. The difference in how people reacted to me was palpable. I wasn't taken seriously, and it wasn't because of what I said or did. It was simply the vibe I gave off. I appeared as someone who didn't care, someone who didn't put in the effort, and that's exactly how I was treated. After that experience, I couldn't ignore the truth any longer. Respect begins with self-presentation. It's not about vanity or obsessing over looks. It's about showing the world that you respect yourself enough to show up well-groomed and prepared. Personal appearance isn't just a superficial factor. It's a form of non-verbal communication. When you put effort into your appearance, you're telling others that you value their time and take the interaction seriously. Think about the impressions you get when someone walks into a room looking like they've put no thought into how they look. The underlying message is clear. They don't care. And if they don't care about themselves, why should anyone else? It may be hard to hear, but appearance plays a powerful role in setting the tone for how people respond to you. When you take care of yourself, people notice, and they're far more inclined to respect you because you're signaling that you respect yourself. Boundaries, too, play a vital role in how respect is built or lost. If you disregard others' boundaries, you're showing that you don't value their feelings, space, or comfort, and that's a quick route to losing respect. I used to blur boundaries, thinking I was being a good friend or colleague, by involving myself in every detail of others' lives. I offered advice without being asked, checked in incessantly, and inserted my opinions where they weren't welcome. I saw it as caring, but in reality, I was smothering the people around me. It took a stark realization to understand that respecting boundaries is one of the most fundamental forms of respect. One day, a friend told me bluntly, "I just need some space. It feels like you don't understand that." Her words hit me hard, but they were true. I'd convinced myself that being constantly present was a form of support, but in reality, I was suffocating her. By ignoring her boundaries, I had inadvertently created a wedge between us, and the trust she once had in me began to crumble. Boundaries aren't just social pleasantries, they're vital limits that help people protect their mental and emotional space. When you disregard those limits, you're effectively saying, "I care more about my needs than your comfort," which, as you might imagine, does little to foster respect. Ignoring boundaries isn't simply about being overbearing. It's a misunderstanding of what respect truly means. Respect goes beyond kind words or surface-level politeness. It's about recognizing and valuing a person's autonomy, their right to their own comfort, space, and limits. When you honor someone's boundaries, you're validating their individuality, and that's something people instinctively respect. Over time, I learned to hold back, to let others come to me when they were ready, rather than forcing my presence into their lives. Surprisingly, the more I respected their boundaries, the stronger my relationships became, and I began to earn respect rather than demand it. Boundaries apply in the workplace as well. For instance, maybe there's a co-worker who prefers working independently, but you're constantly interrupting their flow with frequent check-ins or unneeded updates. Or perhaps you flood your boss with minor details when they've clearly stated they only want to hear about significant updates. Crossing these professional boundaries signals that you're either not listening or not respecting their time, both of which erode respect quickly. Boundaries aren't about shutting people out. They're about maintaining the health and integrity of relationships. When we respect these limits, we show others that we value their comfort and autonomy. Failing to do so is a guaranteed way to lose respect. One of the worst mistakes I made in my early career was taking credit for someone else's work. In a team project, I contributed my part, but another team member really went above and beyond. When it came time to present our results, I subtly framed my words to make it seem as though I'd done more than I actually had. I wasn't outright lying, but I was definitely bending the truth in my favor. Initially, the praise felt incredible, people were impressed, and I enjoyed the recognition. But the satisfaction was short-lived because people always find out the truth eventually. Not only did my colleague realize what I had done, but word got around, and the admiration I'd gained quickly transformed into disappointment. Taking credit for someone else's work isn't just a breach of ethics, it's an admission of insecurity. When you rely on others' accomplishments to elevate yourself, you're essentially broadcasting a lack of self-belief. In doing so, you sabotage your reputation, and trust is nearly impossible to regain once it's lost. I've seen others in similar situations, people who lost out on promotions, friendships, and opportunities because they developed a reputation for taking credit where it wasn't due. And let me tell you, once you earn that reputation, it's incredibly difficult to shake off. People respect leaders who lift others up, who give credit where it's deserved, and who understand that success isn't a zero-sum game. I had to learn that when you share credit, it doesn't diminish your accomplishments. It amplifies them. It signals to others that you're secure enough to recognize the efforts of those around you, and that's a quality people naturally respect. I started to change by acknowledging my mistakes and making it a point to always highlight the contributions of others. Apologizing and setting things right showed that I valued fairness, and over time, It helped me to rebuild trust and respect. Being emotionally reactive was another destructive habit I had to confront. It's not just about losing your temper, it's about letting emotions dictate your words, actions, and decisions. People won't trust you with responsibility if they're constantly on edge, wondering whether you'll react calmly or lose control. For years, I was a slave to my emotions. If someone criticized me, I'd snap defensively or sulk. In tense moments, I'd let my emotions take the wheel, thinking I was standing up for myself, when in reality, I was only exposing my lack of self-control. Emotional reactivity signals instability and insecurity, not strength. Think of the people you truly respect. They're calm under pressure, able to accept criticism and make decisions without letting emotions cloud their judgment. When you're emotionally reactive, you show the opposite. People start to avoid you because they know any small misstep could set you off. I once worked with a colleague who embodied this perfectly. In meetings, if someone disagreed with her, she'd immediately shut down or lash out. Eventually, people began to avoid involving her in discussions because her emotional outbursts made it impossible to have a productive exchange. Despite her intelligence, her reactivity overshadowed everything else, and she quickly lost the respect of those around her. I had to realize that my emotional responses were often triggered by insecurity. Every angry outburst or sulky withdrawal was a reaction to feeling vulnerable or threatened. But over time, I learned that true strength doesn't lie in passionate outbursts. It lies in composure. When you can remain calm in the face of stress or confrontation, people see that as real strength, and they respect you for it. The Stoics had it right. While we can't control what happens to us, we can always control our response. Once I started practicing this, my relationships changed. People trusted me more, and I began to gain the respect I had been so desperately seeking. In one of the most heated arguments with a close friend, I was on the verge of losing control, but a part of me paused and reminded me that emotional reactivity would only destroy what I was trying to protect. So, I listened instead of lashing out, and that moment saved our friendship. Respect isn't earned through shouting or proving a point. It's earned through self-discipline and the ability to remain composed even when emotions are high. The harsh reality is that respect is a reflection of how you treat yourself. If you're constantly making excuses, being lazy, neglecting your appearance, ignoring boundaries, taking credit for others' work, or reacting impulsively, you're undermining your worth from within. Look at the people you respect. They're not flawless, but they show consistency, accountability, and a sense of control over their lives. If you want to be respected, you have to respect yourself enough to let go of these self-sabotaging habits and start showing up in a way that reflects the person you want to be. Learning to respect myself was like peeling back layers, each one revealing a habit I needed to confront. I had to dismantle each of these behaviors, not just to gain the respect of others, but to finally earn my own. The next habit I tackled was people-pleasing, a sneaky trap that I'd fallen into without even realizing it. At first, I thought being liked and accommodating would naturally lead to respect. I thought that if I could make everyone happy, they'd see me as someone worthy of admiration. But people-pleasing is an endless loop that leaves you drained and unappreciated. The more I bent over backward, the less respect I felt from others, and the more invisible I became. It was like I was willing to diminish myself for the sake of everyone else's comfort, and all it did was make me a shadow in my own life. I remember constantly saying yes to things I didn't want to do, all because I feared disappointing people. I'd take on extra tasks, stretch my time and energy thin, and pretend I didn't mind. But what I didn't realize was that every yes given out of fear or obligation was a no to myself. People weren't seeing me as a helpful, considerate person. They saw me as someone without boundaries or self-respect. Respect doesn't come from self-sacrifice. It comes from standing firm in who you are, knowing your limits, and saying no when it's necessary. Over time, I learned that saying no isn't about being unkind or selfish. It's about being real. When you set boundaries, people may initially be taken aback, but ultimately they respect you more for it. You're showing them that you value your time, your energy, and your well-being. People-pleasing is often just another form of insecurity, a fear of being disliked or seen as difficult. But real respect doesn't come from everyone liking you. It comes from people knowing where you stand. Then there was the habit of negative self-talk, which may seem harmless, but is actually one of the most damaging behaviors you can have. If you constantly belittle yourself, you're reinforcing a mindset of inadequacy. And here's the thing, if you don't believe in your worth, no one else will either. I used to be my own harshest critic, running through all my perceived flaws and failures on a constant loop in my mind. I thought this self-criticism was keeping me humble, but it was actually stripping away my confidence and consequently the respect others had for me. Every time I thought I wasn't good enough or capable enough, I projected those beliefs outward. People can sense self-doubt. They can see it in how you carry yourself, how you speak, and how you react under pressure. I realized that if I couldn't respect myself, if I kept tearing myself down internally, I'd never be able to convince others to respect me. Respect starts with how you speak to yourself because that inner dialogue shapes everything else. I began replacing self-criticism with self-affirmation. I started to acknowledge my strengths, forgive my mistakes, and approach my goals with a mindset of growth rather than self-doubt. This shift in how I saw myself radiated outward. People noticed the change in how I carried myself, and as my confidence grew, so did the respect I received. I learned that it's not arrogance to believe in yourself. It's a form of self-respect, and it's foundational to how others see you. Another major obstacle was the habit of gossiping. At first, it seems harmless, a way to bond with others or vent frustrations, but it's a habit that quietly erodes your credibility. Every time I gossiped, I thought I was just joining in, maybe even building camaraderie with others. But what I didn't realize was that gossiping sends a message to those around you. It says that you can't be trusted to keep confidences and that you lack integrity. People began to see me as someone who was willing to talk about others behind their backs, and it made them wary. Gossiping is a habit that reflects insecurity. It's often a way to deflect attention from your own issues or insecurities by focusing on someone else's life. But if you think about the people you truly respect, you'll notice that they don't waste time talking about others. They're too busy focusing on their own goals, on building something meaningful. Once I became aware of how toxic gossiping was, I made a conscious effort to stop. I focused on elevating conversations rather than dragging others down. And as I did, I noticed a change. People trusted me more, confided in me, and respected my integrity. Self-respect is reflected in how you handle your finances too. I used to be reckless with money, spending impulsively, and living paycheck to paycheck without a plan. I thought that as long as I could cover my basic expenses, it didn't matter. But over time, I realized that financial stability is a huge part of self-respect. People see how you manage your resources, and if you're careless or irresponsible with your finances, it signals a lack of self-discipline. Financial irresponsibility creates stress, and that stress seeps into every aspect of your life, affecting your relationships, your work, and even your health. When I started taking control of my finances, creating a budget, sticking to it, and setting long-term goals, my entire outlook changed. I felt more confident and more in control of my life. People began to see me as someone reliable, someone who was planning for the future rather than just drifting along. Respect is built on trust, and when others see that you have your life together financially, it instills a deeper level of trust and respect. Lastly, the habit of constant complaining was something I had to confront. I used to vent about anything and everything, thinking it was just harmless expression. But complaints are draining, both for you and for the people around you. Nobody respects someone who's always finding fault, who's always focusing on what's wrong instead of what's right. Complaining shifts your focus away from solutions and keeps you stuck in a mindset of negativity. It's a habit that reflects a lack of resilience, an inability to see the good amidst the challenges. Over time, I learned to shift my complaints into actions. Instead of focusing on what I didn't like, I started looking for ways to change it. I became more proactive, more solution-oriented, and as I did, people noticed. They started coming to me for advice, viewing me as someone who could handle adversity with a positive outlook. Complaining doesn't lead to respect, resilience does. And resilience is about facing challenges head-on, focusing on solutions, and moving forward with strength and optimism. Each of these habits, people-pleasing, negative self-talk, gossiping, financial recklessness, and constant complaining, was holding me back from the respect I sought. Breaking free from them required honesty, self-discipline, and a commitment to change. But as I slowly replaced these behaviors with healthier ones, I began to feel a shift in how people treated me, and more importantly, I began to respect myself in a way I never had before. As I continued to peel away the habits that had held me back, I found myself coming face to face with something even more deeply rooted, the fear of failure. It's a fear that many of us carry, often without even realizing it. I used to be so afraid of failing that I'd avoid taking risks, stepping out of my comfort zone, or attempting anything that might make me look foolish. I thought that playing it safe would somehow protect me, but what it really did was keep me invisible. People respect those who are willing to put themselves out there, who take risks and aren't afraid of falling flat. Avoiding failure doesn't make you respectable, it makes you forgettable. In my effort to dodge failure, I was actually holding myself back from success. I'd say no to new opportunities, keep my ideas to myself, and shy away from challenges, telling myself it was better to be cautious. But deep down, I was just paralyzed by the thought of looking incompetent. I'll never forget the moment when someone close to me pointed out that my fear of failure was keeping me from growing. They said, "If you're never willing to fail, you'll never really achieve anything worthwhile." That hit me hard because it was the truth. I was trying to protect myself from failure, but in doing so, I was also preventing myself from earning respect. I decided to start embracing failure, to see it not as a sign of inadequacy, but as a stepping stone. Every mistake, every setback became a lesson, something that could make me better. I began to realize that people actually respect you more when you're willing to fail in pursuit of something meaningful. It shows courage, resilience, and an unwavering commitment to growth. When I started to accept that failure was a part of success, my confidence grew, and others took notice. People respect those who aren't held back by fear, those who dare to try even if the outcome is uncertain. Closely tied to my fear of failure was the tendency to procrastinate. Procrastination is a deceptive habit, because on the surface it seems harmless. You tell yourself you'll get to it later, that you work better under pressure, or that you're waiting for the right moment. But in reality, procrastination is just another form of self-sabotage. It's a way of avoiding responsibility, and people notice when you're constantly putting things off. I used to be the kind of person who would wait until the last minute to tackle important tasks, always rushing to meet deadlines and making excuses along the way. But procrastination was more than just poor time management. It was a sign that I wasn't respecting my commitments or myself. Over time, I realized that procrastination wasn't just about laziness or lack of discipline. It was rooted in fear and self-doubt. By delaying tasks, I was avoiding the discomfort of hard work, the possibility of failure, and the pressure of high expectations. But as I watched people around me who were reliable, who took action without hesitation, I noticed something. These were the people who commanded respect. Procrastination, on the other hand, signaled a lack of reliability and a lack of seriousness. I made a commitment to change, to tackle tasks head-on instead of pushing them off. I started setting small, achievable goals, breaking down big projects, and holding myself accountable for my time. This shift in behavior didn't just change how others viewed me, it changed how I viewed myself. I became more confident, more disciplined, and I earned a newfound respect from those around me. There was also the habit of over-apologizing, which I hadn't even realized was affecting me until someone pointed it out. I was the type of person who would apologize for everything, even things that weren't my fault. If someone bumped into me, I'd say, "Sorry." If I shared an opinion in a meeting, I'd preface it with an apology. I thought that being excessively polite and accommodating would make me likable, but in reality, it was sending the wrong message. Over-apologizing was diminishing my presence, signaling to others that I lacked confidence, and undermining my own authority. I realized that by constantly apologizing, I was essentially asking permission to exist, to take up space, to have an opinion. And people don't respect someone who's always shrinking themselves. Respect comes from standing firm in who you are and expressing yourself without constant self-doubt. I made a conscious effort to stop apologizing unnecessarily. I saved my apologies for moments when I truly needed to express regret, not as a default response. This subtle change had a profound impact. People began to take my words more seriously, and I noticed that I was starting to take myself more seriously too. Another habit I had to confront was the tendency to hold grudges. I used to think that holding on to grievances, remembering every slight and betrayal, somehow made me stronger. I thought it was a way to protect myself, to ensure I wouldn't be taken advantage of again. But holding grudges is like carrying a weight that only grows heavier with time. I came to realize that forgiveness isn't about letting others off the hook. It's about freeing yourself from the burden of resentment. When you hold on to grudges, you're essentially allowing others' actions to control you. It's like giving someone else the power to dictate your emotional state. People respect those who can let go, who can forgive and move forward without carrying bitterness. It's not weakness, it's strength. I had to learn that forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting or condoning hurtful actions. It means choosing to prioritize your peace and growth over past grievances. Letting go of grudges allowed me to approach life with a lighter heart, and others could sense that change. I noticed that people were more drawn to me, more willing to trust me, because I wasn't carrying around old bitterness. Respect isn't about building walls. It's about cultivating resilience and a positive outlook, even when you've been hurt. One of the most eye-opening habits I had to shed was my addiction to comfort. I was someone who valued security, routine, and predictability, and I thought that staying within my comfort zone was a way to avoid failure and disappointment. But comfort is the enemy of growth, and if you're not growing, you're stagnating. I realized that people don't respect those who are constantly seeking comfort. They respect those who are willing to challenge themselves, to face discomfort, and to push beyond their limits. Leaving my comfort zone wasn't easy. I had to take on projects I wasn't entirely prepared for, speak up in situations where I felt nervous, and stretch myself in ways that felt uncomfortable. But each time I did, I felt a shift. I grew a little stronger, a little more capable, and others noticed. They respected my willingness to step up, even when it was difficult. Comfort may feel safe, but it's not where respect lives. Respect is earned in those uncomfortable moments when you decide to rise to the occasion rather than play it safe. Finally, one of the toughest habits to confront was my own inconsistency. I used to start things with great enthusiasm, only to abandon them halfway through when the excitement faded or challenges arose. I was inconsistent with my goals, my commitments, and even my relationships. I thought that my initial efforts would be enough, that people would see my intent and overlook the times I fell short. But inconsistency chips away at trust. If people can't rely on you to follow through, they won't respect you. I had to learn that consistency is one of the most powerful ways to earn respect. It's not about grand gestures or big promises. It's about showing up every day, even when you don't feel like it. I started setting realistic goals, committing to small daily actions, and holding myself accountable. As I became more consistent, I noticed that people began to count on me. They trusted me to be there, to follow through, to be reliable. And in that trust, I found a new level of respect that I hadn't experienced before. In the end, transforming these habits wasn't just about gaining the respect of others. It was about building a version of myself that I could truly respect. Each habit I let go of brought me closer to the person I wanted to be. Respect isn't something you can force or fake. It's something you cultivate step by step by aligning your actions with your values. When you live with integrity, self-discipline, and a commitment to growth, respect naturally follows. And as I finally learned, that respect is worth far more than any quick approval or fleeting admiration. It's the foundation of a fulfilling life, built on authenticity, resilience, and true self-worth.